Hi everyone, good evening, good afternoon, good morning to different parts of the world. Thank you for joining in. Hi, I'm Anisha, Oman Book Lovers Club. Before we get started, a quick introduction. Oman Book Lovers Club was founded for the sheer love for books and reading, to borrow, share, exchange books, and meet fellow book lovers. And since then, it has transitioned into so much more. The vision is to connect all book lovers in Oman and across the globe. Stop for all things books, all information on books and book lovers and reading. We have You want to connect with fellow boys and talk about your favorite books? Here you go. You want to share your books and borrow from other members? Here you go. You want to meet fellow book lovers? Here we have virtual meets for different genres, read along book of the month followed by a book discussion, and very soon face to face meetups coming up for all members. We just had our volunteers meetup last week, which the hangover is not getting over yet. And all of this replicated in our kids club, teens club, and there are book reviews, records, people seeking suggestions for books for themselves and for kids, numbers growing each other's TBR, you name it, it's here. So as you can see, enjoy most and engage in that. A happy space for book lovers. It was live chats at OBLC. We did a couple of what's we launched the season 1 of live chats with authors in November. The entire season with 7 authors, ensuring diversity in terms of age groups, genres, and also the backgrounds of authors. It was a small idea, and as I connected with more and more authors to plan it, and as it was taking shape, as days and weeks went by, I connected with more and more authors over time, and live chats shaped into something more concrete, structured, coming up season by season. As we began work on season 2, we looked for a theme again, and this time, as it was anticipated around March, we decided to make it an all-women edition. Today is episode 4 of season 2, and we are going to talk to Caroline Frost a little bit about the author to start with. Caroline Frost is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She has released her debut novel, Shadows of Picken Hollow, early this year to stellar reviews from several and recommended by the Washington Post. In her own words, I think a sense of mortality fuels my writing. In whatever time I have left, I want to make something worth leaving behind. There is a giveaway running on our Instagram for an author-signed copy of Caroline's debutante book. So if you're watching right now, do go onto our Instagram, Oman, enter the giveaway and save on the live chat to stand a chance to be the winner. So let's bring Caroline on. Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Anisha. Hi. Hello.
Good morning. Good morning to you. It's really nice to have you here, and thank you so much for taking the time. It has been a pleasure collaborating with you.
Oh my goodness, the pleasure is mine. Thank you, Anisha.
So first of all, congratulations on your first book release, Shadows of Picken Hollow. I must truly compliment you on your writing style and especially the efficiency with which your words convey the characters, emotions, and turmoil. Let's start this conversation by talking about you. I would request you to tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, the person behind the author. Tell us a little about your life.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks, Anisha. So I'm a Texas native living in California for the last 16, 17 years. I grew up in Houston, just outside the area where I've set my story. Pecan Hollow is very much inspired by the land outside of Houston in Fort Bend County, where my father lives out there in the country on a ranch. So I've spent a lot of time out there. It's home to me, but I also have a sort of a visitor's eye for all the details out there. And professionally, I was a psychotherapist for I was licensed for 11 years and recently closed my practice to commit myself to writing full time. And I'm also a mother. I have 3 really
Wow.
cute little kids, under 7 years old, all 3 of them. So I have a full house. I have a lively house, and I have I have I have a lot to do every day. But I love all of it. I feel really
I
lucky.
can imagine. Great. So, before we move ahead, we've got people activated on social media, and I'm going to just quickly bring in the hellos, and if you can say a quick hello back, I think
Sure.
people will really like it. Uh, we have Trupti saying, glad to be here,
Hi,
and
Trupti.
excited to hear how the novel is being created. We have Jao Chocolate, where did it go? From LinkedIn saying hello.
Hi, Joe.
Manasa saying hello again.
Manasa, hi.
Webavi saying we're excited to be part of the chat.
Thank you. Hi, Baby.
The notion of emotions being a therapist and mother definitely reflects in your writing. Wow.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And we have Benazir Khan saying hello.
Hi,
Okay.
Benazir.
Before we start talking about your book, I would like you to share with us, do you like to read, and do you think your writing is by what you read largely?
Yes, I think so. And, I was reflecting on that question, and I think my style has been most influenced by the books that I read when I was most excited about writing and sort of forming my style, I would say between the ages of 17 to 25. I was just doing a lot of reading, a lot of writing. And, I was reading a lot of Larry McMurtry, who's a Texas writer, Cormac McCarthy, John Steinbeck. I've read East of Eden like 2 or 3 times. Virginia Woolf, Flannery O'Connor, even there's a food writer, MFK Fisher, who's just lovely, and I think you can kind of see traces of her in my writing. And then my teacher from grad school, who's remained an inspiration and a mentor, Janet Fitch.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's okay.
There was a error in the caption. I was just trying to correct it.
No worries.
Okay.
I was gonna say
So,
too, at the I was just gonna add one more thing. At the time that I was writing Shadows of Pecan Hollow, I was also watching a lot of thrillers and sort of Western set films from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. So Blood Simple, Tender Mercies, the films of the Coen brothers, also No Country for Old Men, and some of the 90s thrillers like Fatal Attraction definitely kind of went into my my story creation process.
that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I do think, I hear authors saying this often, that if you want to write, you really have to read a lot. So that, I think, it does. Your reading will definitely have some style, I'm sure. So tell us about your journey as an author. What made you venture on this path of writing? And the second part that we would like to cover next is, what does it take to be a published author? So why did you have
Okay.
these 2 parts, 2 big parts? But yeah,
Okay.
both parts.
So, well, my mom always encouraged reading and surrounded us with books. So I had I think a very rich vocabulary of books and literature as a child and a young person. And when I started thinking of myself as a writer, probably started in high school when I was writing for my school newspaper. And I started to get a sense of how reading can impact others, how writing can impact others. And so, I wrote, as an example of when I started seeing this connection, was I wrote an article about a teacher who had been, a mentor to me as well. And I had this experience with her that was, we were baking cookies in her kitchen, and her dog Jack was kind of, messing around our ankles, and there was powdered sugar everywhere. And it was this lovely experience. And in the process of writing about it, I tapped into some deeper themes about tradition and family and connection through cooking. And, that on one level was meaningful to me. And then when I published the article in my school paper, I saw that it was also meaningful to other people. People came up to me and said, "Oh, I really loved that. That left a mark." And so leaving a mark was, that sense of leaving a mark on a reader was something that I really liked and helped me see myself as a writer.
Wow. So the second part is, shared is the writing, the journey, where inspired, the journey to become a writer. But the another, I've heard a lot of people say that writing is one thing, publishing is a completely another story. But before we enter that, I'm going to take a couple of hellos again from the audience. Ishan Pawan says, "Hey guys, thanks for joining, Ishan." And you were answering the previous question about what you like to read, and that's, I think, a question in continuation to that. Okay.
Favorite genre?
Yeah. What was?
Yeah, I mean, I'm drawn to literary fiction because I love language and playing with language, and I love a deep exploration of character, as well as a gripping plot. But I found the writers who really most excite me tend to be more literary. But within that, I love the Southern Gothic genre. I love the deep psychology, the family dysfunction, the crumbling houses, the humidity, and the grotesque. I think you'll probably see some of that in Shadows of Pecan Hollow.
Yeah. So let's talk about the popular part at our, in our live chats, the publishing journey. What does it take to become a published author? What were the, with our experience on live chats now, we have also become more aware and educated about the various paths and options. But do share your experience.
Yeah, well, I can share my experience. I'm like, I think a lot of people watching thought of publishing as something kind of mystical and magical that happened over there to other people. And so when I was writing my book, it was for me. I was writing it just to see if I could do it. And, for years, I didn't really have ambitions to publish it. It was a exercise to see if I could complete a novel from start to finish. I was very taken with my characters. I was taken with the way the story was unfolding, but I didn't know where I was going. And I certainly didn't kind of have the audacity or the courage or whatever to try to get it published, until I'd been going at it for several years and had put, so much time and had so many pages. I thought, well, I've worked on it so long, I might as well try. I mean, what could it hurt? So I did have some experience from grad school. I went to writing school to be for creative nonfiction, to write. I wanted to be a food writer.
Wow. Very
and
different.
I had taken. What was that?
I'm saying very different from what you actually ended up writing.
Yes, I know. There are some crossovers, but it's technically and sort of like it would have been a very different path. But I had taken a fiction class and just had a sort of vague sense of how to write a scene. We did these 2-page scenes.
Hmm.
So I used that in my sort of adventure of writing this novel. And I also had some information about how to go about querying for a novel. So querying publishers is this process. It's basically an introductory letter saying, "Hey, this is what I've got. This is what I've written. This is why I think it's interesting,
Hmm.
and this is how many words it is. If you would like to see more, please let me know." And I cold queried about 30 agents. I knew you had to have an agent. I cold queried 30 agents. Several got back to me asking for pages. Only 2 offered me representation, but that was 2 more than I was expecting. And so I got to have an agent, and then that is sort of a big step forward, closer to getting published. And then the agent then helped me. Her name is Liz Winnick Rubenstein. She helped me get my pages into shape. They were not in shape enough, and we worked on that for about a year and a half in edits. And then we sent it out to publishers, and I got one offer, and it was an offer I was very glad to have at William Morrow. And
Wow.
yeah, so I think the most amount of it's like 95% writing your book as best as you can, and then another 4% researching and trying to find the agents who represent the books that you think your book is like.
Hmm.
And then once you've got an agent, that things start to take care of themselves a little bit more for you.
Right. Right. I also have heard from a few authors I've spoken to that the original draft that you write and then the several edits that it goes through with with the mentorship of publishers and agents, um, did this is just a very off the top of my mind question. Do you think that really changed the story, or does that interfere in the creative process? Because well, we do understand there's art and then there's sellability, so and when these two merge, at there has to be a balance that needs to be struck. So what would you
Yes.
say to that? How has your experience?
I
Difficult
will say
question,
I
I'm
feel,
sorry.
yeah, no, it's a wonderful question. I think it's a central question. We want to write the stories we want to write. We also want people to read them and know where to find them. And there is a balance to be struck for sure between what you want to put on the page and what the publisher, who has a lot of experience, knowing what sells and, how to find its readers. Um, I would say I feel very, very grateful creatively. I have had an agent and an editor who are really respectful of my ideas and my vision. They both have weighed in and said, like, this is what I think, and I feel strongly about it. And for the most part, those notes have been welcome. And there were a couple of notes that I rejected, but overall, I'm very much lined up with my agent, and I mean with my editor creatively.
That's
And
very
I'm
nice.
sure that doesn't always happen. I'm sure that there's
Yeah, I can
a lot
imagine
of
because
variation.
yeah, I mean that's how typically that can happen in any field. It could be artists, it could be an organization. Where the operations want to do something and the sales need something else. So that kind of conflict or a balance, I think it's a common
Yeah.
occurrence. But I'm so glad to hear you had a great experience. So moving on, I don't know. Yeah, that's somebody who's joined us. Thank you for joining. There are a lot of questions coming in from our audience about the writing process and the book
Hmm.
specifically to the story. There's another member saying hello, so let's say hello to her. Hi, Azima. Thank you
Hi,
for joining.
Emma.
So, I'll take those questions later when we start talking about the book. I want to bring in a little bit about your writing process right now before we deep dive into the book discussion because there's a lot to talk about there. So,
Mhm.
how did the story happen to you, or how do the stories happen to you? Because we are going to talk about what's next, and I know. So, how do you shape the book? And I know in your case, it's been a very long process, and we will talk about
Yeah,
that too. Characters development. How did the
yeah.
story happen in your head? How did you shape the book? And I've heard very interesting answers from different authors on this topic. You know, some say that this is why I did what I did, and some say that the story just happened on its own. It just came out of my head. So, really want to hear
Hmm.
your style. What's your writing process?
Yeah, it really is, does seem to be different for everyone. For me, this story um, came to me not even as a story, more as sort of an emotion that attached itself to a character. And the emotion was, um, I think, rage and despair.
Mm-hmm.
And I dug deeper into, what would make this character feel this way. And I got this image of a little girl who's run away from foster care, and she's just making her way down the highway looking for food. And from that image, I wrote a scene. And from that scene, I started to get all this information about this girl. And that is the scene that put her in the situation that then sort of blossomed out into this entire story, which is when she first meets Manny, our anti-hero, our villain.
Yeah, great. So I think this is the point where we deep dive into the discussion about the book we are here for. Quoting from somewhere else, at over 400 pages, Shadows of Beacon Hollow takes the readers on a long journey, not unlike Kit's journey to find a home. It will especially resonate with readers who have their own hard-won stories of survival. I would agree, and there are a lot of questions that follow. So, you have briefly talked about it, but for members who join in the middle of the chat, I'll repeat this question. What was the inspiration for this book? Why did you decide to write this particular story? In different questions, you have partly answered it, but I'd like you to repeat.
Sure, yeah. So this particular story came to me when I was going through a hard time with my now husband. The only time we ever broke up were the 2 weeks that I wrote the screenplay that became this book.
Wow.
So, you know, everything happens for a reason. And, I think I was feeling pretty intense feelings and kind of went to the page to try to figure out how to work them out. And it was a great, it turned out great because it gave me something to focus on. And I had a blast writing it, actually. Just sort of wrote 8 hours a day for 2 weeks and had a screenplay at the end of it.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And then I sort of put that in a drawer for a few years and came back to it when I was pregnant with my first daughter. And so it came, it was born out of this raw emotion, but then as I had done, I had my own therapy. I, been practicing as a therapist. I sort of infused it with all these different layers of experience that helped me to understand that original raw feeling. And I hope, made the story much more layered as well.
Yeah. So, as you just mentioned, sorry, that was my mistake.
Mhm.
As you just mentioned that you told us about the time you wrote this, and my next question was going to be, do you think any of the characters take after you or any inspiration from people close to you? So,
Not in a linear sense. I think that I think that with each character, I am able to explore either an aspect of my personality, a feeling that I have a a window into, whether from my own experience or from experiencing it empathetically through someone else. Nothing that I explore is completely foreign to me. And yet I have not had the experiences of my characters. So it's really, it is amazing when you go to write about this stuff, how much you have experienced, whether through your own or someone else's experience or watching a movie. There are these sort of, what is the word? Vicarious experiences that you then internalize, and you can feel like you've had them once you start to try to put them on the page.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I also, we talked about this before. You have about a decade-long experience in family therapy. Um, how did that help you bring out the tussle between kid? Okay, that's a very specific question, but we'll come to that part of the question later. But like you said, those are not your experiences which you've written about. But do you think your career aided your understanding of the human emotion and human behavior to be able to build the character of Kit? Because as I was reading some of the reviews also, had it been somebody else, there could have been a possibility of Kit being written in a very cliched manner. Whereas for a mature reader, uh, it's very heartbreaking to experience Kit's journey because you can see what's happening. And some of the reviewers have really praised you for your handling of the emotion and the character, being able to admit that we do actually end up behaving in certain ways is not easy for a human being. And that's why, as people say, and it's not an easy read emotionally. I'm sorry, I've mixed up a lot of my questions. But
yeah, I think, well, yes, I think that my career has helped me immensely. And one of the things that it taught me to do was to observe really, really carefully and to look beneath the surface. So when someone yells at me in traffic, my first reaction is to get pissed off, but then I go beneath the surface and I just think, oh, okay, well, maybe that person's been cut off 5 times today and, is having a hard time.
yeah,
Okay, that's an example, but I do the same with my characters. I want to, it's not enough for me to have them act. I write a whole lot of information for each character
yeah,
that doesn't even make it into the story, that informs their decisions.
that that guides their behavior in your head.
Yes. And so Manny, even though he is patently a bad dude, he's not all bad. There are aspects of him, there are sensitivities. He's quite pathological, but there are explanations for his behavior. They're not excusable, but they inform his choices.
Correct.
So I want everyone to be understandable, if not lovable. And that is really important to me, and certainly a discipline I developed as a therapist.
Yeah, yeah. I agree because a lot of times when we are reading or watching or telling stories, we tend to have the good or the bad, the villain or the hero. And it's I mean, not very commonly do we see gray characters acceptable and not being fit into a very classic villain or a hero uh, category.
Yeah.
So that is, I think, what's really different and also intense, like we say. So coming back to, so the second part of it, which I skipped because we are trying to focus on how your career helped develop this story. So yeah, mistreatment, assault, violence are part of the story, and I must say that the book is, like we are talking, it's not a very easy read emotionally. uh, would you like to shed light on kids problematic notion of love and how it holds her back from a fulfilling life, and continuing, how your
Yeah.
career has also helped you aid this? How did that help you bring out the tussle between Kit and her teenage daughter Charlie? So a little bit about the story.
Yeah, sure. Well, I work I work a lot with problems in attachment. And healthy attachment is when a child is raised by a caregiver who's there most of the time, who provides them enough love, stability, reflection, kindness, who mirrors their emotions and helps them understand their emotions. Most of us have had good enough parenting, good enough attachment. It doesn't mean that we don't date, jerks sometimes, but overall we're okay. Many people too have had disruptions. Even if they've had good enough, they've had disruptions in attachment. And their relationship seeking behaviors reflect those disruptions. Kit has had one of the worst, if not the worst, attachment failure, which is she's had neglect. So she was abandoned by her mother. She was raised by indifferent to irritated foster families.
Yeah.
And what that has left within her heart is a huge starving hole that she is, when she's, in her best moments, she's seeking to fill it. In her worst, she's just flat. She's numb. And so in seeking to fill that hole, which is an adaptive response, she is drawn to the only person who would give her the time of day, Manny. And as bad as he is, he gives her something. He gives her attention. He gives her a home. He gives her a life. And so she attaches to him. And even after he starts mistreating her, and this is the nature of abusive relationships, her mind cannot conceive of him being bad because he has provided her the only source of love and protection.
And it's actually quite quaint that we do, if you think of it, we, not the degree, in varying degrees, we do see such hints of such relationships around us.
Sure.
It's part of life. That's how stories also come about. And we don't always, it's not always possible for us to maybe understand or recognize it, but it happens in varying degrees all around us.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to before my next question about the story, I'm going to take a few questions from the audience.
Sure.
Benazir here asks, what was the hardest scene to write?
Great question. Let me think about that. I can tell you the easiest scene to write was the prologue. I got to start with, because that's the easiest question to answer. Easiest scene to write was the prologue, because I just kind of tacked it on. My agent said, oh, you need something kind of atmospheric and something to set the mood. And I was in a rush and I wasn't sure if it was going to stay or go, but I just kind of just cranked it out in maybe 2 hours or something. That was the easiest one to write. Whenever I'm not putting a lot of attention or energy on something, it flows. If I think it's going to be really important, that makes it it makes it come a little more slowly. Man, I think I rewrote the I won't tell you what happens in it, but I rewrote the climax a number of times. And I think that's because as I was editing the story, different things would change. Different plot points would change, and that would then affect the way that scene was cast. And so I had to change the characters' interpretations, their choices, and it's all just like this fine tuning work. One word can change the cast of an entire scene. So Yeah, I would say the climactic scene was the hardest, and also a lot of the connective tissue can be difficult too. You know, when you've got these two scenes, they happen, one happens, the other one happens, but you have to figure out how to get from point A to point B, or more like point, you know, N to point M. It's it can take, you know, you've got these two things that happen, but how the heck am I going to get her from here to here? That can be really challenging too.
Hmm.
And have it feel natural and inevitable.
Yeah, yeah. True.
Thank you.
The next question, I think you did, when you started introducing yourself, you did cover it, but I'm going to still take it anyway. The background location of the story, is it based out from the place you have connection with? So,
Yeah, so this is the countryside in Fort Bend County, Texas. My dad has lived on a ranch for most of his life, and he bought this old church house that he turned into his home. And I think he bought that when I was less than a year old. And so that's very much kind of the home of my dreams. Even though I think I only lived there full time for 4 years, I visited on the weekends, and I ended up getting married there. And there's something just very personal about that landscape, about the textures and the grass that kind of like pulls at your clothing, and the red soil, and the smell of like a stagnant pond and the muddy creek. It's just
your talent with words, you're building a picture for us right there.
yeah, it's just when it's a part of you, it's easy. I'm there right now as I'm talking about it.
Yeah, yeah. Talking about the
And it
ranch.
was important.
Sorry, yes, please go ahead.
It was important to set the story there, not just because it's kind of the landscape of my infancy and my childhood, but also I think it matched up with the characters really well. It is both beautiful, very pastoral, but also uncomfortable and thorny, and untamed in a way. You know, I was always getting ant bites and, you know, yellow jacket stings, and, you know, there's rats and mice in the corners and spiders in your bed. You know, there's just a lot of wildlife, and it's hard to keep it out, and there's discomfort for, like, you know, a little kid. And I think that's what makes it interesting and compelling as a landscape for setting a complicated, thorny story.
I agree. I think that the setting really helps set the mood and helps you build the picture as you read. So, yes. And as you talk about the ranch, I'm reminded of Catherine's recent posts about, the setting of her recent book. And as I mentioned in the prologue, I was very, I wanted to talk about it in the introduction, but I missed the special connection we have with Caroline Frost. She's the cousin of Catherine Center, who was part of the grand finale, who was the guest in the grand finale in the season one. So that is how I think I got connected to you, Caroline. I think so. That's a special connection I think OBLC will have with Caroline. I'm very happy to be talking to you.
Oh yeah, I love Catherine Center. If you haven't read her books, she's just like an ice cream sundae of a writer. She's just delicious. You can't not like her writing. It's just wonderful.
When I was talking to her, I also, was talking about this fact about how fiction and non-fiction are such notional, broad categories in the literary world, because I personally believe that the wall doesn't exist, because if you're reading Catherine Center, you're actually getting life lessons through a fiction novel, a story. Whereas if you are reading stuff like maybe Who Moved My Cheese or maybe a 5 a.m. Club, you're reading a story in a non-fiction. So, I really enjoyed reading the few Catherine Center books that I did, because with people's lives, you are getting some life lessons, I'd say.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
She puts inspiring fiction in such a beautiful package, and her dialogue is just adorable, and I really love. It's just
full of
feel
life.
good all over.
Yeah, I mean, even her social media persona is just so full of life. So, okay, coming back. I think this is also something we've covered, but if you'd like to add something, Mansa asked the character in your book, is it an imaginary person that you created or was it inspired by a real life person? The question I asked before, I think the question was already posted in the comments. So if you want to add something.
Yeah, she is imaginary. Although in an interview with my high school paper, one of the journalists who interviewed me said, "Oh, she reminds me a lot of Lisbeth Salander from
Oh,
the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series,"
yes.
and I was like,
Mansa
"Oh
has
my
just
gosh,
read
you know
that
what?
book.
It's
She should read.
completely unconscious, but I think that a big part of her character must have made its way her way into Kit.
Yes,
Although I didn't read the
I agree.
books, I did see the movie, and she must have shaped my writing of it.
Yeah, and
I'll have to
it
look at
may
the.
have shaped or may not have shaped, though it can be a coincidence. But now that you mention it, I really agree, and I'm sure she'll agree because I know she's read that book only recently, last month, as part of one of our challenges. So, comments, Mansa, Parjeet, who have read this book, please do post in the comments. I'll go to the next one now. um, I think we also talked about this. So, in case you want to add something, outline the story before it just happened was my question earlier. So,
Well, the screenplay served as an outline for the novel, but that changed a lot as I was
mm,
writing it. And I'm working on a novel now and I'm outlining and it's really helping me. So I learned to outline much better this time, and I think it's a good practice for me.
okay. Yeah, just taking a couple of comments from the audience. The story is definitely not an easy read emotionally, I think. Yes, it's a lot to process. Um, Janet Fitch say great book.
Janet. Oh my gosh, you
Uh,
guys, that's Janet. That's my teacher and an amazing writer of several books. White Oleander is one of them. Paint It Black. The oh my God, Marina M. Sorry. And Chimes of a Lost Cathedral. She could not be more fabulous. Go buy all her books. She's wonderful. And I love that she's watching.
yeah, I think I've already covered this. I'm going to go ahead to the next one. Um, yeah, this is interesting. How do you think the emotional or an unprocessed trauma affected the bond between Kit and her daughter?
Uh, Hold on. How do you think the emotional well-being of mother or an unprocessed trauma affected bond? I mean, yes, absolutely. I think that is Kit's emotional arc is the twin paths of her resolving her not even resolving but just beginning to heal from her
Hmm.
abandonment from her mother and her mistreatment by Manny is in lockstep with her relationship with Kit. And she cannot move forward with Kit until she moves forward with her healing, her own healing in her childhood. And at
Hmm.
the same time, when she's able to move forward with Charlie, it in turn heals her. It's what's the word? When she's able to move forward with Charlie, she then feels healing in her sort of childhood wounds.
Hmm. Would you categorize your book as a psychological thriller?
You know, it doesn't. I think genre expect people who are expecting a genre thriller would be disappointed because it's not for the first
Mhm.
at least half. It's not brisk. It's as Lou Burney said, it's a slow burn. I really like to take my time in setting everything up. There is a thriller tautness to the last half, and there are certainly psychological thrills, but um, I definitely did not want to be beholden to those genre expectations. I wanted to do the story that will, you know, take as long as I needed to take, and to go as deep as I wanted to go with these characters, to do them justice. So it's frustrating. It was frustrating, I think, for my publicity team. I think my publicity team was trying to figure out where it was going to go on the shelves, and because it does have an appeal to people who like thrillers, who also like literary fiction. It's a little bit of a mashup. There's some Southern Gothic in there as well. There's some action, but I think you have to have a foundational appreciation for literary fiction to be able to go on the ride, because it just takes some patience, I think.
Correct. Interesting comment there. Do you think this book can be included as part of the learning for psychology?
I would never. No, I would not. Well, I don't know. Gosh, I don't think I'm qualified to say that. I hope all psychology students buy my book, because I hope everybody buys my book. But I think somebody with a psychology background would find it interesting.
Sure.
A couple of MFTs have direct messaged me and said, MFT is my license, by the way. A couple of therapists have connected with me to say, I really appreciated how you characterized this attachment trauma. I really appreciated how you, how much time you spent with the dynamics of emotional abuse. So I think it's kind of like fun and satisfying for someone who knows the profession deeply.
Yeah.
But I certainly wouldn't want to be scrutinized for correctness by a professor. But I think that's a fantastic question.
The more I hear about it, I get more and more interested in reading it.
Thank you, Azima. I'm so happy to hear that.
Okay. Another question by Sakshi Kundra. The beauty and the danger of the landscape setting somehow foreshadows or parallels the relationships in the story. Ooh, wow.
Great question, Sakshi. Thank you. Yes, I do. And I think it's fairly unconscious that I did that. But yes, although one conscious thing that I did set up was were the blackberry brambles in the first chapter, where she's slashing at the blackberry brambles with her machete. How she interacts with nature, how she interacts with animals. Animals and wildlife are a big parallel for me, or I guess are big motifs for me. You know, how, like I said before, how thorny, uncomfortable, wild, unbridled, the unbridled psyche, I think, can sometimes show up like an animal. You know, when we stop caring what people think about us, we behave wildly. We can behave wildly. So much of being human is being social and socialized. So I'm very curious about what happens when we stop being polite and start getting real. Anyone watch The Real World? But yeah, what happens when people are driven to, like Kit is, driven to abandon their kind of social graces, social norms, and what that what that animal side looks like, and how you get back into a relationship with people.
True. Nazakat Malik says hello. Thanks for joining, Nazakat.
Hi.
Kit was raising a daughter with survival skills instead of love. Was it because of the foster home she had been through or the longingness of love she expected from Manny? Interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I think her experience with foster homes,
Hmm.
and just never having had an example of good mothering. I mean, she had a glimpse at it with Eleanor, but she, um, it wasn't internalized. So I think there was enough of it there for her to provide a stable enough home for Charlie, that Charlie wasn't a complete
Yeah.
psycho. Charlie was more adjusted than Kit, and we can see that in her chapters, and in her behavior, even though, she's a little unhinged and she's got an attitude. She is certainly better off than Kit. That's a testament to Kit, but also no one would accuse Kit of being Mother of the Year. She's got a lot to learn.
Very interesting comment here again, wherever I can relate this relationship of Kit and Manny with it ends with us. What would you say?
Oh, I
I really
haven't
don't
read
know.
that.
I haven't read it either, so I really don't know.
Hmm.
Interesting. Survey has just recently read it, I think.
I'll have
So
to
yeah,
look it up.
no comments there. Thank you. Okay. There are lots of questions pouring in. Uh, okay. I'm coming back to one of my questions here. So the ending makes you happy, but there is a sense of incompleteness for the relations. Without giving any spoilers, what are your thoughts about the ending? I don't know if it's difficult, but
How do I talk
and
about
you,
the ending without spoilers? Let me think.
yeah, and
Well,
you did mention that you wrote the climax scene actually many times. So
yes, I wrote the climax scene many times, and the resolution, the ending did change. Um, the first ending I wrote was more tied up in a bow,
Mhm.
and my editor pushed for a little bit more um, ambiguity.
Hmm.
And I agreed with those changes, and I really like the way it ends now. Um, but yeah, there's a totally different ending that, one maybe I'll put it out there one day,
Yeah,
but no,
I mean,
I
like
prefer the one.
the bonus
You
read
can choose
on
your
your
own
website.
ending.
Typically how the alternate ending as a bonus read on your website. So
Yeah, no, I think she was right. I think I did not write a story with a tied up in a bow ending. I think, my impulse in the first ending was like, I just personally put Kit through so much. And I really do feel Kit as a human being. I mean, somebody that's real to me. And so I think at the end I was just like, honey, I just want to give you everything. I want to wrap you up in love, and I just want to make it all right for you.
yeah.
And maybe readers would have preferred that. I can't know, but I think the ending that the ending that I've written that is published is the correct one, even if it's like, oh, I want more. But I think if I gave you more, you'd just be like, oh, all right. I think that, yeah, I think we did the right thing.
There's a very, very interesting question which just came in. Since your book is such a visual treat, who would your dream cast be should it be made into a movie or TV series? Did you ever think of this?
Oh,
That's a surprise question.
Oscar Isaac, are you busy? I love Oscar Isaac for Manny.
Oh
I think,
wow, you already have him
yeah,
in mind.
wouldn't he be great? 15 years ago, maybe Javier Bardem. Um, I love Stephanie Beatrice is a really great actor in the U.S. Also, Gina Rodriguez would be really cool for Kit. Yeah, whoever it is going to have to work out beforehand because she's got to be buff. She's got to be strong. She's got to be physical. And then I wish, yeah, oh my gosh, Zendaya would be amazing for Charlie. We could cheat her older, a little bit older, but yeah.
Are these afterthoughts, or did you by chance have some of these actors in mind while shaping the characters? I mean, just a random thought.
You know, I can't remember if I did or not. I did have Sissy Spacek in mind for Eleanor.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, Sissy Spacek. Yeah, I had her in mind. But no, I don't think so. I don't think so. It certainly helps though. It helps when you're shaping the character to have someone in mind. But no,
Yeah.
these kind of came out.
Excellent.
They were themselves.
So, lots of book talk. Would you like to read an excerpt for us, a few lines?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let me just grab this. Okay. So I'm just going to read from the prologue, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to. I feel like if I get too far, I'll ruin something. Prologue, Round Top, Texas, 1976. And just feel free to stop me. I'll read a couple paragraphs if it goes along. Just let me know.
Yeah, sure.
The young woman awoke to the sound of scissors. She blinked the haze out of her eyes, rolled over the tangled sheets to greet him. She was 19 or so, but the crease between her brows and the wear on her skin hinted at a life not lived but endured. He sat naked beneath the window, a stack of newspapers beside him, cutting. The light dripped down his slick black hair and pooled on his shoulders, the tops of his knees, but his face, which was bent toward his work, was only shadow. Is that good?
Yeah. Enough for the people who have not read the book to buy it immediately.
There's Kit and Manny in a nutshell right there.
Yeah. So, we talked about it before. What about is the book available worldwide through, I mean, Amazon maybe, or how can people,
Yes,
where all can people buy it?
Yes, it should be on Amazon worldwide and Kindle.
Okay. That's great. So yeah, anybody in any part of the world can. That's, I think, for the reaction for reading out the excerpt.
And if you can't, let me know.
Yeah. So yes, for people who are watching, Caroline's Instagram handle is tagged on our post. So you can reach out to her if you have any inquiries related to the book or where to buy it. So, Caroline, slightly off tangent here, and for members of our club, what does it take to make writing a full-time career? And you know what we mean by making it a full-time career, where it can be fulfilling enough. Because a lot of people hold their day jobs and write till the time they are able to reach a stage where they can focus on it full time and give up their careers that are paying well. So,
Yeah,
what
well,
does it take?
gosh, I think it's I think everybody has a different situation, and so what might be enough for one person wouldn't be for another. I live in a 2-income household, and so it was feasible for me to take time off to write full time. I think it takes a lot of hustle. I think it takes being obsessed with it and wanting to be doing it most of the
Yeah.
time. I'm thinking about the scenes I'm going to write when I'm driving my kids to school. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of setting my day up. But it's hard to make money as a writer. It really can be. So if you're trying and you're not, and you're still working your day job, that's okay. I think that's normal. It just,
Hmm.
you know, it's hard to support yourself as a writer. And I think that's why I put it off for like 16 years.
Yeah.
While I tried to sort of, you know, I pivoted when I was 26. I just thought, oh God, I can't do this. So I went to psychology and sort of had my my safety career, which ended up being like a love affair. I loved being a therapist, and I will certainly go back to it.
Yeah.
But the initial idea was, oh my gosh, I need a day job. I need to be able to support this this obsession I have.
Yeah.
So
I had to talk about that part. I think I missed it somewhere. You did tell us before that it took you 10 years to write the story and then the couple of years for the publishing journey. So, two questions there about the 10 years part. One, I think what's commendable is the patience and seeing it through, because a lot of people might just give up because life happens, things change, you evolve, your thoughts evolve, and the story can then, maybe become irrelevant. So, first of all, congratulations for seeing it through. So, do talk a little bit about that, the journey of working on the story for 10 long years, which is really a long time. And point I had made is, do you think that this writing this story also added or went hand in hand with your experience as in your career as a counselor?
oh gosh, that's so
Your
interesting.
your experience fueled the character development and the story we talked about. But did also you think vice versa might have happened as you were working on the story
Say that
anytime?
last part again.
Yeah, I mean, we said that your career did aid your might have
Mhm.
aided your story development, character development. But do you also think the vice versa might have happened at some points when you're working on the characters? Did that help you as a counselor at any point in time?
Oh, I see what you mean. Um, I mean, I think any practice of sensitivity and empathy supports the therapeutic process.
Yeah.
So if you are an artist and you are painting, I think that supports the therapeutic practice. You're paying attention, you're being patient, you are allowing beauty to unfold at its own pace. Um, yeah, so to answer your question, yes, I do. I think that writing helped me be a better therapist.
Wow, wow. And how about the journey of 10 years through the story? Didn't you at any time feel that you started writing when you were that old and that time the story was relevant, and at some point did it start losing the relevance because times change, world is so changing so fast? So just talk
Mm,
about that a little bit, the journey of a decade of writing a story.
yeah. Well, one thing I was going to say when you're asking, thank you for acknowledging my tenacity. I'm
Patience.
very proud that
Yeah.
I finished this book.
Yeah.
Um, so somebody challenged me to run a marathon when I was in my early
Oh
20s,
yes.
and they said, you know, your brain lacks the vision to carry through a project long term. And he just said, you know, would you sign up for a marathon and finish a marathon? Like, would you be interested in that? And didn't I couldn't run. I barely run around the block. You know, I wasn't fit in that way. I was like gym fit, you know, elliptical fit. But going, you know, learning how to run takes a lot of mental toughness and ability to be bored, ability to just show up and like hit the pavement.
Yeah.
So I did that. I trained for a year and I ran a marathon in 2005. And it was so hard. It was every bit as hard as I thought it was going to be, and then some. But what it did was it set up this capacity in my brain to just sort of show up, just to show up and be dogged
Yeah.
and not on day one, not expect to run 26.2 miles, to just know that I'll get there eventually if I just put one foot in front of the other. So that really, really helped me stick with this process. Um, and if I could have done it any other way besides running a marathon, I would I would have done it. It was like I did not end up running another one, but the one time was enough to teach me how to write a book.
Wow.
I think there was another question in there. I've lost it.
No, yeah, about the journey of 10 years. Did at any point, and that's just
Oh,
something that came to my head. Did you at any point feel that the story's relevance was changing with the changing times? I also feel, our experiences in life and our thoughts and behavior also depend on our own stage of life. I don't think age matters that much as our stage of life, our thoughts, our
hmm
experiences.
hmm
So, in my opinion, and in my own personal thinking, if I was 25, I thought very differently and I would think of a story differently. And when I would be 35, I would think of the same story very differently because of my own life experiences. So, did that ever
Yes.
happen in the 10-year journey that
Mhm.
so different scenes, maybe you changed scenes because your perspective changed from the last time you wrote?
I'm sure it did. The time that stands out most clearly to me was that when I got pregnant with my daughter, my first child, I had the idea. I thought, oh gosh, um, you know, is Kit might be so limited in her capacity for self love that she may need a proxy. So that's when I thought of giving her a daughter,
Hmm.
that she could then start to see, if she could love her daughter, then she could then learn to love
Yeah.
herself. If she
Yeah.
could have compassion for her daughter's struggles, if she could feel protective of her daughter, then she
Hmm.
could transfer those lessons to herself, which is the
Right.
way a lot of people learn self-love, is
True.
through their children or a pet or somebody that they take care of.
Yeah.
It's I think there's a scene with a coyote pup, and it's this experience of loving and feeling protective of someone else, can awaken feelings of
True.
self-preservation and self-love.
True.
So that was the big moment, was when I myself was going through
Yeah.
pregnancy. I started having these feelings, and that was a big change that I added to the plot. That, of course,
Hmm.
so much of this is about the mother-daughter relationship.
Yeah. So, I mean, your life experience did shape the story
Yeah.
in several
Topically,
ways.
though, I never paid attention to current events when I was shaping the story.
Mhm.
That's part of why I said it in the past. I
Hmm.
just wanted it to be about these characters in this situation.
Yeah. So
Um,
the world around us, you mean?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. True. Yeah. 70s and 90s. Of course, there was a lot going on, but that doesn't figure in the story. So that's actually nice. It's the person's
Mhm.
story, the people's story, really. So,
Yeah. Hmm.
of quick reactions. The things we've been talking about. It's amazing. Thank you,
Thank
Devansh.
you.
And I'm going to. I know you've answered this before, but it seems like Devansh Pawan joined somewhere in the middle of the chat. Um, So, if you could just briefly repeat the answer here. Seems like a very enticing book. Were the characters inspired based on someone in your real life?
The short answer is no. But in all of my characters, I'm exploring some feeling that I've felt or aspect of myself. I think we're all very multi-layered, um, and that's the fun of writing to me, is playing around with those different wild personalities, exploring my murderous self, exploring my
Yeah,
the maternal self, or the fierce self.
yeah. Thank you. So last but not the least is, as they say, what's up next? What can we look forward to? And we have a lot of questions from the audience, which I will bring on the screen. Is
By
there
the
a
way,
new? Yes.
quick question for you. My screen is frozen. Do I look frozen to everybody?
No, I can see you very
Okay.
clearly. The internet
Okay,
keeps
good.
fluctuating, so it's fine.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
like I asked, what's
So
up
what's
next?
next?
What can we look forward to?
Well,
There's a comment.
I'm
Is there a new story brewing? When do you think would be the next Caroline Frost read?
thank you for that question. I'm very excited to be working on my next novel from William Morrow again. The title is called Murder Ballad, and it's set in the country music scene of 1977 in Nashville, shortly after the death of Elvis Presley. And it is the story of a young singer-songwriter who is kind of leaves her fundamentalist Christian family. And she writes a wonderful song about a gruesome crime, and that song gets stolen. And so she has to decide between implicating herself in this gruesome crime and letting someone else sort of have the career that she always wanted.
Wow.
So I'm really, really excited about it. It's been so much fun. I took a trip to Nashville, and I love the country music, sort of country folk music from the 1970s, and all the outlaw country music stars. So it's just been fun to immerse myself in the music, in the outfits, and the hair, and the drama of that world. So
Wow.
I'm really excited to share it with you. And this time, I'm hoping it'll wrap up in fewer than 10 years. Shooting for 2, but we'll see how it goes.
So when can we expect that? 23, 24?
Probably 24. Not sure what part of 24 yet, but if I say that, maybe I can keep to the schedule.
Okay. So, couple of closing comments from some of the audience. It was interesting to attend today's chat to know more about Caroline and Shadows of Beacon Hollow. Thank you so much. The way you talk about it, your book feels like a product of labor of love.
Very much so.
I had a very interesting question. Yes. Learnings from this, any learnings from this book, so which you will want to avoid in your upcoming book? You think anything?
Yes, I've been much more organized with this second book, in part because I sold it. I had to come up with the whole story in order to sell it to the publisher.
Yeah.
And so I did not write the whole story, but I wrote out a treatment, an abridged, kind of like a synopsis of the story. So it
Yeah.
really helps to know where it's going, what the A and B storylines are, and have all of the characters' choices make sense. Now, I expect it to change as I'm writing. I know it will, but having a really clear plan is so far is helping me a lot, as well as I have been sort of sticking to a word count challenge every day.
Oh, wow.
And that's really helping me with productivity, because I am a precious writer. I will write a sentence for an hour to get it right.
Wow.
And that's not very good for churning out pages. So I've challenged myself to a rough draft to get myself all the way through the book, and then I'll go back and layer in style and lyrical flourishes, and give it a little sex once I've finished the kind of nuts and bolts story writing.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think we are at the end of our questions. Loads from me, loads from our audience. It's been one of the most engaging chats in our history. So it's time to announce the giveaway winner. I think we shared with you a list of participants at the beginning of the chat, and some of them have been very actively asking you interesting questions. So based on the participation on Instagram and the question that probably you like the most, I would request you to announce the giveaway winner.
Okay, I have a name. Let's see. Congratulations, Benazir Khan Ahmed.
Oh,
You won the giveaway. I'm looking forward to sending that to you. And I trust you guys will. Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah,
Please let me know how you would like your copy inscribed.
Yes, I will. We will connect both of you, and you can go ahead. So really happy. Thank you so much,
Wonderful.
Caroline, for the giveaway gift. Thank you, and um, I don't think there's something more coming into the chat. Yes, Benazir is here.
Thank you. Congratulations.
All right. So it has been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure, Caroline, today. My apologies to everybody for the technical difficulties we faced today in the initial part, and for your patience also, Caroline, for that.
Of
Um,
course.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. It has been wonderful talking to you. And for everybody who is watching us today, please tune in to the next episode where we will talk to author Vaishali Hamlay about her non-fiction narrative books next week, April 12th, at the same time as today. And a prologue for the same on Instagram Live will come a couple of days before, as usual. So, thank you all. Have a brilliant day ahead, and good night to the people in our part of the world. Wishing you a great week ahead. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Anita.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.